October 28, 2022. KALDOR Ridge, Western Alaska, 6:47 a.m. Snow drifts across the ridge, swallowing every sound. A broken radio crackles somewhere under the ice. If anyone finds this, it means I didn't make it back. The voice cuts through static, faint, measured, almost calm. An old GPS unit lies half buried in frost, its green light still blinking after 8 winters. A single line flashes on the screen. Last transmission, KALDOR Ridge. A woman kneels beside it, breath fogging in the cold. Her name is Captain Riley Shore, bush pilot. She brushes away the snow and hears the rest of the recording. They're not hunters. There's something else. They know I'm watching. Silence. Then, a distant hum, rotor blades, moving closer. She looks up. Through the fog, a dark aircraft glides low, unmarked, heading straight for her. Riley whispers, barely audible, "Elias Marin, what did you find out here?" The wind rises. The light on the GPS flickers once, then dies. Snow drifted across the runway like slow-moving smoke. A single plane sat, waiting, its engine idling low, breath fogging in the freezing dawn. Elias Marin checked his rifle, his map, his watch. Everything was exact. He moved with the quiet precision of a man who had survived too many winters. Former recon soldier. 22 years hunting the wilds of Alaska. His legend wasn't about trophies but restraint. The bears he didn't shoot were part of his story too. He nodded once to the pilot, climbed aboard, and didn't speak again until the mountains swallowed them. Below, the rivers twisted like scars. His eyes traced every ridge, memorizing landmarks the way soldiers memorize exits. The radio cracked faintly. "KALDOR Ridge weather's holding for now," said the pilot. Elias just replied, "Copy. Drop at Point Delta, 10 days in, 10 out." He'd filed a full plan, maps, waypoints, emergency codes, even a fail-safe beacon. No one prepared like Elias Marin. That's why people trusted him. When the plane lifted off and left him standing on white ground, he didn't wave. He simply adjusted the strap of his pack and walked into the trees. The sound of the engine faded, replaced by the slow hiss of snow. His base camp was simple: canvas tent, cook stove, one cot, one journal. Each tool lined up with military neatness. A tin mug, polished by habit. He lit the stove and spoke to himself, softly. Same rules, same respect. The wilderness listened. Then silence closed in, heavy and total. By the second day, he found the prints wide, deep, almost perfect circles. A large male. Judging by the stride and weight, he followed carefully, noting wind and terrain, leaving small markers every half mile. Each night, he wrote notes in a leather-bound log. Day 2. Found sign near the ridge basin. Tracks fresh. Wind from the east. Possible den near tree line. His handwriting was steady, the kind that doesn't belong to fear. On the 4th day, a storm rolled in from the Gulf. Visibility dropped to nothing. He dug in, anchored the tent, and radioed base camp. "Still good," he said through static. "Found signs of a big boar. Staying put till weather clears." A pause. Then Martin, his outfitter contact, replied, "Copy that, Marin. Check in again on the 21st. That was the last clear transmission. 3 nights later, the wind stopped. Elias stepped outside, listening. The forest felt wrong. No movement, no ravens, not even the soft cracking of ice. He moved his flashlight slowly across the trees. Something metallic glinted faintly near his tent, a fragment of wire, maybe dropped from a cargo strap. He frowned. He hadn't brought any wire. Back inside, he locked the tent zipper from within. He recorded a quick note into his voice log. "Unusual object near camp perimeter. Could be aircraft debris, but doesn't look old. We'll inspect at dawn." Morning came gray and windless. The snow held faint indentations, boot tracks, not paws. 2 sets. He followed them for 20 yards before they disappeared into hardpack. Every instinct from his soldier years returned at once. He turned, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved. He went back to camp, checked his gear. Everything accounted for except one cartridge box. Missing. He crouched, staring at the empty space, then slowly exhaled. "Someone's been here." The radio refused to connect. Static. Endless static. He tried again, changing frequencies, tapping codes. No signal. He switched on his GPS recorder, the backup he carried for emergencies. Every detail mattered. Coordinates, timestamps, audio notes. He began logging, one line at a time. That night, the moon cut through thin cloud. Elias sat by the fire, revolver within reach. He replayed the day's discovery, the human tracks, the silence, the missing ammo. He thought about calling the search plane early, but pride whispered otherwise. He was Elias Marin. He'd handled worse than fear. He lay down fully clothed, rifle beside him. Outside, a sound brief, soft, like someone stepping on ice and stopping. He held his breath. Then, it was gone. October 21st. His next scheduled check-in never came. At base camp, the outfitter waited 2 extra days before alerting the rescue crew. When the first chopper reached KALDOR Ridge, the snow was chest-deep and winds howled through the valleys. Search teams found the tent half collapsed, canvas torn. Inside, blood on the cot, gear scattered. The stove tipped over. They found claw marks on one post, deep and wide. Tracks led 20 yards into the trees, then vanished. No sign of a body. The official report called it fatal bear encounter. Case closed. But the details didn't fit. Elias's rifle was missing, not broken. The claw marks too high for a bear standing on 4 legs. Still, the file was sealed. Accident, not foul play. Weeks passed. Snow buried the site. His name joined the quiet list of men who never came back. In Fairview, a memorial was held in a small hall lined with antler mounts and faded flags. An old friend, Caleb North, spoke softly. Elias wasn't just hunting bears, he was protecting balance. That's what he did. Riley Shore, the bush pilot who'd once flown him, stood at the back. She remembered his last words before boarding. "If I don't check in, just assume I stayed out there too long." She didn't believe that either. Winter gave way to spring, then to years. The story faded. The forest took back its secrets. But out there, buried under 8 years of ice and silence, something waited. A small, weatherproof GPS unit, still sealed, still blinking faint green beneath the frost. And inside it every moment of Elias Marin's final hunt. Every note, every recording, waiting for someone to listen. 8 years later, the wind still spoke the same language. Cold, relentless, unforgiving. Captain Riley Shore flew low over the white ridges of western Alaska. Her Cessna hummed steady, wings slicing through a sky the color of steel. Routine supply run. Nothing special. Nothing ever was until that morning. She'd flown this route 100 times. KALDOR Ridge was just another name on her chart. A frozen scar no one cared to visit. But today, sunlight struck something beneath the ice, a glint of metal where nothing should shine. Riley narrowed her eyes. 200 yards off the gravel strip, half buried near a line of spruce. A reflection winked at her like a signal mirror. Instinct said check it. She landed rough, tires crunching through crusted snow. The engine idled as she grabbed her parka and stepped out, air slicing her lungs clean. Her boots sank deep, the silence pressing like a held breath. At 20 yards, she saw it clearer, small, weathered, almost swallowed by frost. A rectangle of metal, dull gray under layers of ice. She brushed it gently, the cold biting through her glove. Letters appeared. Property of E. Marin. Emergency data unit. Her hand froze. Elias Marin. The hunter who vanished 8 winters ago. She had flown him out here once, same ridge, same season. Memory flashed, his calm eyes. The precise way he packed his rifle. The way he'd said, "If I don't come back, tell the forest I kept my promise." Now, here was his promise, blinking faintly under the snow. Riley carried the device back to her cockpit, breath trembling. The casing was battered but intact. She flipped open the cover. The screen flickered to life. Faint blue digits pulsing. Still operational. Still logging. 8 years of silence. Now breaking. A folder blinked on the display. Audio. Logs. 2015. OCT. Her thumb hesitated, then pressed play. If anyone finds this, something's wrong here. The tracks don't match. They're flying in more than they're hunting. The voice was Elias, calm but clipped, a soldier's rhythm. Static swallowed the end. Then another file started automatically. Found carcasses. Too many. Not scavenged, processed. They're cutting paws, removing tags. I think they're trafficking. Riley shut her eyes. The sound of his voice after 8 years hit like an avalanche. It wasn't fear in his tone, it was duty. She powered down the device, heart pounding, then powered it back on. She couldn't stop. Photo files opened. Bodies of brown bears lined in snow, claws missing, hides rolled like cargo, metal crates marked with the same insignia. AFO Logistics. She knew that brand Alaska Frontier Outfitters. Victor Haynes's company. The same man who'd filed the missing person report for Elias Marin. Riley exhaled slowly, fog clouding the cabin. The world outside had gone silent again. She suddenly felt watched. That night she stayed in Fairview, renting a room above the airfield diner. The GPS sat on the table beside a mug of black coffee and her map. Snow tapped at the window like restless fingers. She needed help. Someone who'd understand what this meant. She scrolled through old contacts and stopped at one name. Dr. Caleb North. Wildlife biologist, field researcher. He'd spoken at Marin's memorial years ago, refusing to accept the bear attack report. She hit call. Caleb North. Caleb, it's Riley Shore. I found something. It's Marin's backup unit. A pause long enough to feel the weight of 8 years. Then, where are you? They met 2 hours later in a maintenance hangar. Caleb was older now, face lined by wind and fieldwork. He listened without interrupting as Riley played the first recording. When it ended, he rubbed his forehead slowly. He was documenting something, Caleb said, systematically, like a field report. Illegal hunts? Worse. Commercial scale. They plugged the device into a laptop. Dozens of coordinates lit up a satellite map scattered across the Kaldor wilderness. Each point tagged photo, audio, or cache. Caleb zoomed in. At least 15 carcasses within a 40-mile radius. Wolves, bears, even caribou all harvested off-season. He clicked another folder. Voice. LOG. 18. They know I'm here. Aircraft circling above my camp last night. Found boot prints near the cache. I'm burying this unit at the ridge, under marker stone. The recording ended with a single breath. Then, silence. Riley's hands trembled on the controls. He knew they'd come for him. Caleb nodded. And he made sure this survived. By morning, they'd copied every file. Photos, timestamps, flight paths, evidence enough to crack open a decade of corruption. But something didn't fit. Caleb opened the last image folder. The frame was dark, taken at night near Marin's camp. A figure stood at the edge of the firelight, too tall to be Elias, holding a rifle. Riley leaned closer. You see that? He zoomed in. The face was blurred, but the jacket patch was visible. AFO Guide Division. Victor Haynes's men. The same outfit that trained and guided Marin's expeditions. The official story had never mentioned anyone else near his site. No aircraft scheduled. No resupply flights that week. Yet the GPS logs showed repeated landings. Caleb scrolled further, fuel manifests, serial numbers, route IDs, each one tied to Haynes's operation. He looked up, voice low. Riley. This wasn't an accident. He found them poaching. They silenced him. Was. Outside, the wind picked up. The hangar creaked under the pressure of a rising storm. Riley checked her watch. It was almost midnight. A soft thud echoed behind them. They froze. She moved toward the sound, flashlight ready. Only a loose tarp, fluttering in the draft. But both knew the feeling, eyes watching from somewhere unseen. Caleb turned back to the laptop. I'm sending encrypted copies to my Institute server. Think it's safe? Nothing's safe. But data moves faster than bullets. He uploaded everything, then shut the lid. When the storm clears, we take this to someone federal. Who? Agent Mara Duval, Environmental Crimes Bureau. She owes Elias a favor. Riley glanced at the GPS again. The light blinked faintly, steady as a heartbeat. For a second, she swore she heard Elias's voice echo through the static. If I don't come back, make sure they know what happened here. To it is longs and fire. It is long the ride. Morning arrived, brittle and gray. They loaded the Cessna, double-checking seals and fuel lines. Riley found a fine cut across one of the cables, fresh, deliberate. Her stomach dropped. Caleb. Someone's been here. He didn't answer. Just looked toward the trees beyond the hangar. A black SUV idled there, engine running. No plates. Tinted windows. After a moment, it rolled slowly away down the frozen track. Riley exhaled. We're already on their radar. Then we move faster, Caleb said. They lifted off as snow began again. Below them, Kaldor Ridge stretched wide and white, silent witness to everything buried there. The GPS sat on the dashboard, still blinking its data now copied to 3 drives. Caleb stared out the window. All this time they made him the villain, he said. Said he broke his own code. Riley's jaw tightened. He didn't break it. He died keeping it. And their AG into a time in the con. By the time they reached Anchorage airspace, radio chatter filled the cockpit. Weather warnings. Routine flights. Nothing unusual. But when she switched to the private frequency for the Environmental Bureau, the line went dead. She tried again. Static. Then a single voice. Unfamiliar. Captain Shore, you've picked up some dangerous cargo. Turn around. Riley's grip tightened on the yoke. The voice wasn't Mara Duvall's. And whoever it was, they knew exactly what she was carrying. Caleb met her eyes. They're inside the system, aren't they? Looks like it, she said. And we're flying straight into it. Outside, a shadow passed beneath them, another aircraft. Low and fast. Unmarked. Following. The Cessna jolted in turbulence as Riley pushed the throttle. We get to Duval first, she said. Caleb nodded, clutching the case that held Marin's final evidence. Behind them, the unmarked plane banked sharply, disappearing into cloud. The storm swallowed both, and somewhere inside the white chaos, Elias Marin's voice played once more through the cabin speaker. If you hear this, it means I wasn't wrong. Riley's eyes stayed fixed ahead. She whispered back to the static. You weren't. Rain hammered against the federal hangar as Riley's plane taxied to a halt. Agent Mara Duvall was already waiting, dark coat, clipboard under one arm, expression unreadable. She had the calm of someone who had seen too many secrets buried in snow. Riley cut the engine, opened the cabin door, and stepped out into the wind. This is Marin's data, she said. Unedited, untouched. Duvall nodded. Then we start tonight. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered over metal desks and humming servers. Caleb laid out the evidence drives, photos, GPS logs, timestamps. The room felt smaller with every new image. Carcasses lined in rows. Aircraft landing in remote valleys. Coordinates pointing to storage depots disguised as hunting bases. Duvall leaned forward. These serials AFO Logistics. That's Victor Haynes's outfit. Caleb confirmed quietly. And this is his hunting zone. The one Marin disappeared in. The agent crossed her arms. That means the official report was written by someone who already knew. Riley looked up. Knew, or helped. They spent hours mapping every waypoint Marin had recorded. Each led to a cluster of illegal harvests. Bears, wolves, even eagles. Haynes wasn't poaching. He was running an industrial-scale export network. Caleb pulled up the financial overlays. Wire transfers. Shell companies. Coded invoices marked as consulting fees. The sums were staggering $68 million across 8 years. International buyers, he said. Mostly through ports in Oregon and Vancouver. The parts go out labeled as tanned hides legal cargo. But inside? Duvall finished the sentence. Endangered species products. Black market inventory. Riley stared at the board of names. So Marin stumbled on this. He logged everything. Duvall's tone hardened. And they made sure he never reported it. They dug deeper. Every hunting permit Haynes filed, listed oversight by one official. Dana Reeves, U.S. Wildlife Enforcement Bureau. Her signature appeared on every clearance for AFO aircraft. Riley remembered her voice over the radio 8 years ago. Flat and cold. Case closed. Now, the same name repeated through bank records, authorization forms, and encrypted emails. Caleb enlarged one transaction. $200,000 wired from a company registered in Manila to a foundation Reeves supposedly managed. No staff. No physical office. Kickbacks, he said. Protection money, Duvall corrected. She fed them flight schedules, enforcement patrols, even inspection gaps. Riley leaned forward, whispering. That means when Marin's signal vanished, she knew before anyone else. The revelation hit like pressure building before a storm. The room went quiet except for the hum of the monitors. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Duvall straightened. We're building a federal case, but once we move, they'll know. Caleb frowned. How deep does this go? Deep enough that some of our own might be compromised. She turned to Riley. You're a civilian. You don't have to stay in this. Riley shook her head. He trusted me once. I'm not leaving it half-finished. The all-Leslie want to, and there's restin' to lever laters. Duvall studied her for a beat, then handed her a secure badge. Then you're officially under my protection until this is over. 3 days later, they flew north. Destination: AFO main compound on the edge of Fairview. Riley handled the aircraft. Duvall worked the radio. Caleb monitored coordinates. From above, the place looked legitimate hangars, fuel tanks, rows of hunting gear. But beneath that order, Duval saw the pattern. Too many shipments, too frequent landings. Front company, she murmured. Classic cover. She patched into a satellite feed. Infrared images showed hidden storage heat signatures under the hangar floor. Caleb zoomed in. Sub-level refrigeration. That's not hunting equipment. They watched trucks moving at night, cargo loaded into unmarked planes. Every minute of footage felt like a nail in a coffin. Back at headquarters, Duval briefed the Environmental Crimes Task Force. Victor Haynes has built a trafficking empire disguised as ecotourism, she said. His permits were protected by corrupt officials inside the Bureau. We now have enough to request warrants. Riley noticed how some faces in the room shifted when Reeves's name appeared on screen. Uneasy. Defensive. Duval saw it too. She spoke slower. No leaks. No comms outside this room. Haynes has eyes everywhere. That night, as the meeting broke, Riley felt it again, the same sensation Elias must have felt in his final days. Someone watching. Later, in her motel room, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. One message. Some wildernesses are better left alone. No name. No return call. Just a photo attached the hangar they had just surveilled, taken from across the street. Riley's pulse climbed. She locked the door, killed the lights, and called Duval. Someone's tailing us. Stay put, the agent said. We'll move you in the morning. But by morning, it was worse. Caleb's lab had been broken into. Servers destroyed. Hard drives missing. Only one thing left untouched. The GPS unit. Lying open on the desk, its screen cracked but still glowing faintly. Almost like a warning. Duval's team went on lockdown. Forensics found trace oil residue aviation grade. The same used by AFO aircraft mechanics. Whoever broke in knew exactly what to erase. We've been burned, Duval said. Caleb nodded grimly. They're ahead of us. Riley pulled the memory card from her jacket pocket. I copied everything last night. Before we flew in. For the first time, Duval smiled. Good. Then we still have Marin's voice. They played the final audio log. If I don't make it, they're not hunters. They're contractors. Military trained. They move at night. Tell them the ridge isn't the danger. It's who owns it. Duval froze the playback. Contractors. That changed everything. These aren't poachers, she said. They're hired ex-specialists running logistics for black market exports. That's why the bear attack story worked. It looked natural. Caleb muttered. He wasn't killed by wildlife. He was erased by professionals. The next 48 hours blurred into controlled chaos. Federal warrants were signed. Encrypted transmissions moved through back channels. Duval coordinated with 2 trusted field agents. Men who had once served under her during operations in Montana. Code name. Operation Cold Silence. Once we hit Haynes, she said. The Bureau's corruption surfaces too. Reeves will run. Expect resistance. Riley listened quietly, memorizing every detail. This wasn't about revenge, it was about restoration. Caleb added softly. Marin's name deserves the truth written beside it. Duval nodded. Then we write it in ink they can't erase. That night, a convoy of black Suburbans rolled through Fairview's frozen streets. Inside one, Riley watched snow whip past the windows. The radio crackled with encrypted chatter. Team Bravo in position. Thermal confirmed 3 contacts at Haynes' compound. Duval answered. Copy. Hold until signal. Riley checked the GPS again. Its blinking light was slower now. Battery near dead. She whispered to it like a living thing. Stay with us, Elias. We're almost there. At 2:47 a.m., the raid began. Helicopter rotors thundered overhead. Spotlights cut through darkness like blades. Agents breached the hangar doors. Inside, rows of crates marked preserved specimens gleamed under halogen lamps, and at the center Victor Haynes, mid-argument with a pilot, shouting orders. He didn't even reach for a weapon. He just looked up at the lights and muttered. Too late. In a back office, Duval found what Marin died to expose. A full ledger, names, payments, shipments, and signatures. The last page bore Dana Reeves's initials. By dawn, both were in custody. The cold air outside smelled of jet fuel and victory tinged with disbelief. Riley stood beside the crates, snow swirling through broken roof panels. Caleb handed her the GPS, still faintly glowing. He saw this day coming, he said. Riley pressed the unit to her chest. Then he can rest now. But as the sun rose over the ridge, a new unease set in. Their arrests were just the beginning. Behind every document, another name waited silent, protected, watching. Duval stepped beside her, voice low. Don't celebrate yet. Haynes is only one branch. The roots run deeper. Riley nodded. Then we keep digging. The snow began to fall again, slow and endless. The ridge below looked peaceful like it always had. But this time, someone was listening. And from the small, battered GPS in Riley's hand, one last audio log began to play on its own. Elias Marin's final whisper. If justice ever reaches this place, make sure it stays. Riley looked to the horizon. Her breath misted in the cold. And for the first time in 8 years, the silence of KALDOR Ridge felt clean. Dawn broke cold and gray over Fairview. The hangar still smelled of jet fuel and gun oil. Agents moved quietly, cataloging crates and photographing evidence under white lights. Victor Haynes sat cuffed at a metal table, head lowered, frost melting in his beard. Across from him, Agent Mara Duval spread out the seized ledger. Every page told the same story: money, shipments, signatures. You built an empire on the backs of the wilderness, she said. Haynes didn't look up. It was business, demand and supply. No, Duval said softly. It was murder disguised as management. Outside, Riley stood beside the wrecked crates, wind tearing at her jacket. Each tag read export, biological samples. She could still smell the musk of bears beneath the freezing air. Caleb approached, carrying a thermal case. Inside was the original GPS, the heart of it all. Its faint light blinked like a pulse refusing to die. By noon, news had spread. The Environmental Crimes Bureau issued official statements. Headlines blared. Wildlife trafficking empire exposed, federal agents arrest high-profile hunting CEO. But inside the bureau, silence was thick. Reeves's arrest had detonated through the ranks like a buried mine. Her colleagues avoided each other's eyes. Files vanished overnight. Duval knew corruption didn't vanish with a single arrest. It scattered, waiting. So she worked without pause: evidence transfer, court coordination, protection orders. Riley stayed nearby, unofficial but essential. She was the only civilian witness who had held Marin's evidence before the Bureau. Her name was now under seal, her face off every record. That night, they moved her to a safe house on the outskirts of town. Snow whispered against the windows. In the corner, the GPS rested on a small wooden table, still blinking in rhythm. Weeks passed. Trials began in Anchorage under tight federal supervision. Victor Haynes faced 17 counts: trafficking, conspiracy, and the murder of Elias Marin. In court, his lawyers painted him as a scapegoat, a victim of government overreach. But then Duval played Marin's final voice logs. The room fell silent. They're flying in at night, using my camp as cover. If I vanish, tell them this isn't about hunting. It's about profit. Each recording cracked through the courtroom like distant thunder. Riley sat in the gallery, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the playback screen. She could almost feel Elias there, steady, deliberate, unafraid. Caleb testified next, his voice firm but edged with grief. Marin wasn't chasing fame. He was protecting balance. He died doing what we all claim to believe in. The judge nodded slowly. Reeves took the stand days later. Her hair was tied back, her eyes hollow. She spoke in short bursts, voice dry from years of secrecy. Yes, she admitted. I took the payments. They promised it would keep operations small, sustainable. I believed them. Duval's reply was sharp. You believed their money, not their lies. Documents proved her part: falsified patrol routes, tampered inspection logs, erased flight manifests. For 8 years, she'd hidden the truth in plain sight. Now, it uncoiled around her like wire tightening. Riley couldn't look away. This was the woman who'd ended every report with bear attack. Now she sat under oath, whispering, I thought it was already too late. The verdicts came fast. Haynes life without parole. Reeves 32 years federal. Other co-conspirators followed: pilots, guides, accountants. Together, their sentences would outlast their lifetimes. But none of it felt like victory, only release. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed in the falling snow. Duval faced them briefly, speaking only once. Justice isn't vengeance, it's restoration. Behind her, Riley turned away from the microphones. She wanted quiet, the kind Marin once found in the wild. The kind where truth didn't have to shout. Months later, the government designated a new protected zone in the KALDOR Ridge region. It covered over 100 miles of untouched tundra and forest. The plaque at the entrance read, Marin Preserve, for those who guard the wild. Riley flew the inaugural supply drop in her Cessna, circling over the ridge where he vanished. Below, the snow had begun to melt into rivers of silver. For the first time, the valley looked alive again. Caleb met her on the landing strip with a grin that carried exhaustion and pride. "The soil's recovering faster than expected," he said. Riley smiled faintly. "So is the story." They unloaded research kits, motion sensors, and a small brass plate to mount near the old camp. She knelt by the frozen earth, brushing snow aside. Underneath, fragments of canvas from Marin's tent still lay buried. She whispered, "You made it home." Back in Fairview, Duval stood before a review panel in Washington via secure link. Behind her, the caseboard was cleared, photos gone, strings cut, names sealed. Only one item remained: the cracked GPS, mounted under glass. She spoke calmly. "This operation exposed a pattern of environmental crimes connected to international markets. We lost people, we restored others. But it's not over." The senior officer asked, "Do you believe there are more?" Duval looked straight into the camera. "I don't believe, I know." The feed ended. She gathered her coat, paused by the case, and traced a finger along the glass. The device blinked once as if acknowledging her. That evening, Riley returned to her airfield. The wind was gentle, the sky a pale violet. She fueled the Cessna, checked instruments, and sat in the cockpit for a while without starting the engine. Caleb's voice came over the radio. "You're really leaving tonight?" "Just a short run over the ridge," she said. "Old habit." He chuckled softly. "Tell him we're keeping watch." She smiled. "Always." The engine roared to life, propeller catching moonlight as she lifted into the air. The town faded behind her, replaced by the endless white of KALDOR Ridge. The same sky Elias Marin once flew under. The same silence he honored. At 5,000 feet, she opened the radio log channel. Static hummed for a moment before a faint recording played one she'd saved. Marin's voice again, weathered but unbroken. "If anyone ever hears this, don't grieve me. Just protect what's left. That's all the wilderness ever asked." Riley let the message run until it ended in soft static. Then she turned down the throttle and circled once more above the ridge. Snowfields stretched below, glowing silver in the pale dawn. She whispered, "Copy that, Elias." Mission complete. Her eyes lifted toward the horizon where light met shadow. In that silence, the line between man and wilderness blurred, and for a moment, both seemed at peace. Months later, the world moved on. Articles faded, officials changed, and the headlines dissolved into archives. But somewhere, in a quiet government vault, the cracked GPS still blinked. Inside it, a voice remained frozen in digital breath. "If justice reaches this place, make sure it stays." And through the frozen pines of KALDOR Ridge, the wind carried a sound that could almost be mistaken for words. Not loud, not clear, just steady, like a vow repeated by the land itself. The vow of a man who never left his post. Elias Marin Hunter. Soldier. Guardian. A name no longer lost to snow, but etched into the silence he once protected.